Good afternoon. It's Dan Kurz, DK Analytics. Thanks a lot for tuning in. It is Monday, May 25th, 2020, Memorial Day here in the United States. The topic of this video is fascism on the rise. Can we still reverse course? Some brief valuation metrics, as is customary. The US dollar exchange traded value stood at a bloated 99.80. The Fed's balance sheet barely eclipsed $7 trillion for the first time. The US 10-year is hovering pretty steadily at 0.66% yield. The S&P 500 stood on Friday closing prices that I'm mentioning here at 29.55, having had an enormous rally off of a bottom pierced by economic destruction, which is still continuing, but the stock market has chosen to look past that, which I think is a disconnect, but I've gone over that, so I will spare you in this video. Oil closed on Friday at $33.25 per blue barrel, a dramatic turnaround or comeback from negative future prices that I discussed roughly a month ago, and I said it would be a tremendous strategic purchasing opportunity. Well, it's turned into a terrific a tactical opportunity as well. We'll see how that develops. I'm sure it'll give some of that back, but you know that real assets that are scarce and vital will do well in the world we're in, but more on that later. Gold closed Friday at $1,754 per troy ounce, sustaining an upwards drift. Silver closed at $17.69 per troy ounce, slightly narrowing the silver to gold ratio in the process. That is outperforming gold a bit for a while anyway. Before I delve into the topic, fascism on the rise, let me offer you a definition of fascism, a definition which I included in the first post that I published this year, I believe on January 3rd. Here goes. Where socialism sought the totalitarian control of a society's economic processes through direct state operation of the means of production, fascism sought that control indirectly through domination of nominally private owners. Where socialism nationalized property explicitly, fascism did so implicitly by requiring owners to use their property in the national interest. That is, as the autocratic authority conceived it. Nevertheless, a few industries were operated by the state. Where socialism abolished all market relations outright, fascism left the appearance of market relations while planning all economic activities. Where socialism abolished money and prices, fascism controlled the monetary system and set all prices and wages politically. In doing all this, fascism denatured the marketplace. Entrepreneurship was abolished. State ministries, rather than consumers, determined what was produced and under what conditions. My question to you is, after having read that definition, doesn't that sound strangely familiar? Starting with the Fed and ending with our statist-created, thanks Bill Clinton, media oligopoly? I think it should. Let me delve into this topic as the coronavirus response has mercilessly accelerated. The coronavirus, which immunologists and their ilk from the destructive CDC head Fauci in a March 26, 2020 New England Journal of Medicine article to experts from Stanford, Yale, and Rockefeller University have all touted since mid-March to late March that this virus strand, the coronavirus, would lead to overall population rates for those infected by a by it that would likely be around 0.1%. This is a very similar death rate associated or compared to other influenzas. It also happens to be substantially lower than the Asian/Hong Kong based pandemics of 1957 to 1958 and in 1968. Each time, over 100,000 Americans died during those pandemics, according to the CDC. And during those years, America's population was a lot lower. Specifically, in 1957, there were 172 million people residing in the United States, and in 1968, 201 million. Compare that to over 320 million today. Upshot, much higher death tolls than the coronavirus deaths of 74,000 so far attributed to the virus and not other pre-existing conditions. And this, again, according to the CDC, which take it for what it's worth. But with new coronavirus infections rates now dropping off sharply, we're not likely to see that $74,000 death toll widen very substantially. The current death toll from the coronavirus is lower in absolute and especially in relative to population terms. The 20th century pandemics were much deadlier, yet they didn't in 57, 58, and in 1968 shut down civil liberties or businesses or mom and pop stores or much of the economy. Ron Paul, who got married that year and became a medical doctor or entered medical school, I forget which, hardly heard about the pandemic. How do I know? Because he said so in a recent iteration of his Liberty Report. In 1968, the same held true. In fact, the authorities didn't even shut down Woodstock in the following year when 500,000 young people gathered during an age when the only social distancing anybody knew of was probably the requisite personal space required by non-intoxicated strangers, or if you were following the car ahead of you to the same destination. Plus, these pandemics, according to Ron Paul, were just not part of daily conversation. Yet, more people were conscious of the fact that we collectively take all kinds of calculated risks each and every day. But apparently more people had the common sense to engage in cost-benefit analysis, as apparently the authorities also did back then, and less politically based decisions, obviously. Meanwhile, the press wasn't as eager to fan tyranny and not let any crisis to scare the crap out of people to go to waste. In other words, to obey their authorities and give up their rights. Moreover, states that didn't impose in this coronavirus round the same shutdown or quarantine virus response tyranny at the governor, county, and municipality levels, yet collectively exercised sound mitigation strategies, broadly including states such as Florida, South Carolina, Arkansas, South Dakota, Iowa, Nebraska, Oklahoma, and Wyoming. These states' mitigation practices generally included sealing off nursing homes to the degree possible instead of mandating that senior coronavirus patients be integrated into nursing home populations, such as happened in New York State and California, with deadly results. Moreover, the red states that I mentioned have typically had lower coronavirus death rates per capita than deep blue states such as New York, New Jersey, and Illinois. Red states have also had at least somewhat less economic and financial carnage because they didn't close down the state. Yet those very states, those more responsible states, may end up at the federal taxpayer level subsidizing deep budget deficit slash bankrupt states such as California, New York, and Illinois through trillion-dollar bailouts by federal entities such as the Fed, which really isn't federal, but that's another story, and the Treasury, or the two working in unison. Who ends up footing the bill for the spendthrift and the amoral? How about creditors suffering yield deprivation already thanks to the Fed's monetary policy? How about mainstream makers ultimately having to pay higher taxes without the benefit of being able to work the tax code to the same extent as K Street cronies? Fascists. Or how about the general population that will be impoverished by higher levels of inflation that will inevitably result even as the general population's earned income plummets? So what is different in today's pandemic response? Clearly, it isn't in the societal health threat from the virus itself. Rather, it's the virus response reality, which is proving devastating in terms of civil liberties, from freedom to assemble, to privacy protections, to property right protections. Tell me which small business can survive a total shutdown, zero revenues for more than a few weeks, even a soundly financed business. Which small business can hope to reach break even, much less generating income, if the busiest times are rendered obsolete or impossible thanks to social distancing crap, which hasn't proven to be effective except as, or in terms of killing business volume and thus the chances of achieving profitability, while furthering isolation and inhumane social relations, from nixing or ending cheek kissing in Europe to bear hugs in America to handshakes the world over. Is this how the human species has behaved or survived over thousands of years, much less continued its existence? I don't think so. And there's been tons of viruses ever since the human race came into existence. And by the way, this doesn't even address the coronavirus response damage fallout as concerns the average person's health or well-being in a broader sense of the word. Listen, if you would, to the latest effort by concerned doctors. A recent article, its headline, over 500 doctors, US doctors, signed letter telling President of the United States shutdown was a mass casualty event. I'm including some excerpts here. It's a letter written by one of those doctors, Dr. Gold, that compared this situation to triage. Right. During a mass casualty incident, victims are immediately triaged to black, red, yellow, or green, she writes, Dr. Gold. The first group, triage level black, includes those who require too many resources to save during a mass crisis. This is really tough cost-benefit analysis. How can we save the most people? But it's also reality. She continues, the red group has severe injuries that are survivable with treatment. The yellow group has serious injuries that are not immediately life-threatening. And the green group has minor injuries. The red group, she writes, is the one that gets the most attention. Makes sense. Closest to bad results, but salvageable. Millions of Americans, she continues, are already at triage level red. Millions of Americans. These include 150,000 Americans per month who would have had a new cancer detected through routine screening. That hasn't happened, that screening. Millions who have missed routine dental care to fix problems strongly linked to heart disease/death and preventable cases of stroke, heart attack, and child abuse. Suicide hotline calls have increased by 600%, she wrote. She continues, tens of millions are triage level yellow. Liquor sales have increased by 300 to 600%. Cigarette sales have increased. Rent has gone unpaid. Family relationships have become frayed. And millions of child checkups have been missed. Hundreds of millions are at triage level green, she then says. These are people who currently are solvent, but at risk should economic conditions worsen. Exactly what's happening. Poverty and financial uncertainty is closely linked to poor health. The Dove factor, right? This isn't just abstract theorizing, Gold wrote. Instead, she provided examples that she or her colleagues have seen. I will spare you those and try to provide the link so you can read for yourself. Let me turn back to commerce. What about the fact that big box retailers and big cap businesses in general have been able to stay open, have gotten their essential business status, have gotten fed taxpayer bailouts, while Main Street has typically had to stay closed, from grocery stores, all right, mom and pop grocery stores, to bars, to dance studios, to gun stores, to barber shops. My barber recently opened. I finally got a haircut. To gyms, to mom and pop restaurants, to various places of worship, which have only this weekend reopened, from what I could ascertain. All the while, chain liquor stores have remained open, and so have abortion clinics, while, once again, California and New York nursing homes were forced to admit coronavirus-infected people. Is this the appropriate policy response offered by too many politicians and unelected bureaucrats wanting to protect the most vulnerable in our society? How many aborted baby parts end up, I apologize for the formulation, but end up for sale by government subsidized Planned Parenthood operations for untold amounts of money, enriching those trading in what I dare call murder of the most innocent and defenseless humans? Is this how a civil society sets policy? A long-time subscriber to my micro YouTube channel, DK Analytics, said it very well after I shared an article with him the other week, penned by a conservative writer by the name of Daniel Horowitz. That Horowitz piece's title is "We Have Been Lied To: 6 Facts That Change Everything We Know About SARS/CoV/2. In short, about the coronavirus. Those 6 facts that he listed included inflated death counts, states with longer lockdowns having worse overall results, that excess deaths are from the lockdowns, not the virus itself, and that the social distancing was invented by a high school kid and some politicians, not by scientists. I will provide a link to that article in the comments section of this video. Here's what this sage, long-time subscriber said, and I quote, based upon this article I sent them by Horowitz. I have been waiting for just this type of report, and here it is. In essence, subjugated media, subjugated politicians, subjugated officials? Will the people allow themselves to also be subjugated? We, who live under the realm, he's writing from Australia, have always been subjects of the British Empire. You, on the other hand, are not subjects and are meant to live free within a wonderful protection system of rights and liberties. Who are these people that appeared to be so successfully imposing their will over your people? Is there really a deep state? Is there really a cabal? Or is it simply a bumbling, corrupted, and bloated bureaucracy? Will the people say enough? Regards from Queensland. Does this brilliant gentleman sum it up well, or what? Specifically, will enough people rebel at governor, county, and municipal tyranny? People say they want to avoid politics, but it is exactly local government that has so eviscerated their freedoms and their wealth. Did you know that local elections at the county and municipal level typically have voter participation rates that swing between high single-digit and percentages and teens, or a fraction of federal level voter participation rates? It's true. Let me give you, so what am I saying? People get the government they deserve, right? We better damn well pay attention to who runs the local roost. Let me give you some despotic flavor from local or regional fascists across America, which seem to come out of the woodwork to take away your constitutional rights whenever they feel empowered to do so, such as when you've had the crap scared out of you by a virus that the press has for months depicted as I mentioned, the second coming of the Spanish flu. And whenever authorities face no pushback because you are scared enough to give up your liberty for your safety, you end up with neither, just with despotism. Some examples. In LA, courtesy of Tucker Carlson's recent show on this, the mayor has effectively kept everyone hiding under their mattresses, my way of saying it, while Main Street businesses are told to remain closed and big box stores can carry on. He's gone so far as to tell people that if they go to the beach, they can still only do so in small numbers, and that they can't play in a wet sand, only in the dry sand. It's unbelievable. In Kentucky, people have been forbidden from using their swimming pools, while the governor has told his citizens that schools won't be reopening in the fall and that distance learning may well continue until year's end. In Michigan, well, I think you've heard of that extremely fascistic governor, Gretchen Whitmer. She has not only forbidden paint sales, but family visits from across town. Locally, until about a week ago, Lover's Key State Park near Estero Island remained closed, and so did local churches, thanks to county and municipal despotism that had nothing to do, in my opinion, with constraining a virus from spreading, because big box retailers such as Walmart in North Naples off of Immokalee Road remained open, even though they were often filled with strangers that inevitably got much closer to each other than anything you'd ever see at the beach, and also strangers that would be less careful to protect each other's health safety than parishioners would seek to do for obvious reasons. In essence, I believe freedom is at stake here, and free market capitalism is as well, as the two are tied at the hip. Our statist overlords smell power consolidation blood from the federal level bureaucrats, starting with Fauci, down to the local park administrator overlord that until just last week told locals that we can't visit the parks our property tax dollars are paying for, including his or her salary, for our own safety, of course, as those same park heads or state park people enjoy the park for themselves and kick would-be visitors out. Back to the power pyramid. Fauci, who together with his pal Bill Gates long wanted us to shelter in place until a vaccine is created for a virus that will have long run its course by then and will have mutated to a different form, are especially destructively fascistic, in my opinion, not only based on the sustained economic destruction and financial carnage they want to sustain or keep going, but based on the fact that both of them stand to benefit handsomely from any vaccine development that they are invested in this regard. And by the way, there are no novel viruses. All viruses are novel, meaning they're intended targets. In coronavirus's case, human beings haven't yet developed the immunity, the antibodies, to put them down. Yet people have been broadly and erroneously led to believe that the coronavirus is a different virus, thereby swallowing a policy response that has resulted in nearly 39 million people looking for unemployment benefits in the United States within 9 weeks' time. An absolutely unprecedented development, both in absolute terms and relative terms. That is, if looked at a previous total non-farm private payroll level of 129 million before the crap hit the fan, before the virus shutdown response. So it's just unparalleled. One could state that the U.S. state-based, county-based, municipality-based coronavirus shutdown policy response has led to over 500 job losses per coronavirus attributed U.S. death, and those amount to 74,000 people. Again, according to the CDC, directly attributed to the virus, not other pre-existing conditions that were cofactors at the very least. Once again, never mind that the Hong Kong/Asian-based pandemics of 57 and 58 and of 68 each had well over 100,000 people that died thanks to those virus iterations. Yet nothing was shut down and the economy didn't head into the next Great Depression. And never mind that all the despotic authorities triggering massive job losses in our coronavirus policy response all still have their public sector jobs, their outsized pay, and their gold-plated benefits. I mean, talk about beyond the pale. While on this topic, there are still large swaths of the public that have been told to remain at home or to let their businesses die lest they get fined heavily or even thrown into jail. That same public, despite the mainstream media's efforts to hide it, sees one example after another of authorities refusing to abide by the very unconstitutional, tyrannical diktats they force upon the citizenry, from getting haircuts to enjoying golfing to refusing to wear the very face masks they have been mandating that a broad swath of the population needs to wear if it dares venture outside the home. Luckily, more and more people are rebelling after months of lockdowns, shutdowns, lockdowns, and shelter-at-home tyranny. Beaches were wonderfully filled at various U.S. shorelines leading into Memorial Day today over the weekend. Main Street is rising up from barbershops to gyms, and is starting to resist unconstitutional diktats issued by local and state authorities. Good stuff. And perhaps we'll even get a surprising November election result, in that so many people whose lives and businesses have been ruined by the coronavirus policy response simply vote for the party that advocated opening back up ASAP. That would, by and large, be the Republican Party, that other reckless spending party. If only enough constitutionalist judges will help prevent sustained evisceration of individual liberties and property right protections at local, state, and federal levels, including preventing executive order-based eliminations of voting at polling places, physically going to vote, that those polling places often or typically require voter ID, while simultaneously allowing only mail-in voting to help prevent the coronavirus from spreading, of course. In other words, that the drive by Democrats and leftists and statists to make voting at polling places impossible under the guise of it's too dangerous because of coronavirus infection fear, that these executive orders are overturned by judges, and that we don't elect officials based on fraud-filled mail-in voting, because mail-in voting has no flash and ID card requirement, and it is rife for all kinds of fraud, including double counting, massive alien voting, non-citizen voting, and no voting documentation. That is, no legitimate voting documentation. You have a lot of forged paper that gets passed around. In short, this is the Democrats' playbook on steroids in order to fully regain control of the elected part of the federal government. If that happens, look for accelerated and extended iron-fisted tyranny of the kind we've already seen since the coronavirus response disaster. Amidst all this insanity, quickly hardening despotism, emasculation of representative government, evisceration of non-crony capitalist property right protections, continued economic and financial destruction, and rapidly expanding money printing by the Fed. By the way, its balance sheet has nearly doubled in less than a year. It is clear as can be to me that we have a massively and accelerated and deepening inevitable return to 1970s style stagflation on steroids, both in terms of much higher inflation rates ultimately, and on the other hand, much weaker real GDP growth, if not real GDP contraction over a sustained period. You can't shut down production, eliminate many suppliers of goods and services, bankrupt them, print tons of money, and expect a constructive outcome for the majority of your population, much less for the economy or its balance sheet. If this doesn't comprise a blinking red light signal to purchase or increase your satellite allocations of physical precious metals held in your own possession, I don't know what could. That's it here from Memorial Day on May 25th, 2020. Hopefully, those Americans that gave their lives to defend codified liberty at home won't look down on us and see it being lost thanks to hardening domestic tyranny. In other words, an inside job. Thanks for viewing. I hope you got something out of this. Over and out. It's Dan Kurz, DK Analytics, on Memorial Day, May 25th, 2020.